Hey everyone, this is Neil Hopkins. I play Sportsmaster on CW's Stargirl, and I'm here with Elias in the Man Cave.
Welcome to another episode of the Man Cave Chronicles.
Welcome to the party, pal!
You're my boy, Blue!
Yo, Adrian!
A podcast with interviews of amazing guests from the world of pop culture.
Oh, yeah!
TV.
Nice!
Movies.
Oh, I love the movies!
Comedy and more. From deep inside the Man Cave, your host, Elias.
Neil, welcome to the cave.
Thanks for having me.
How are you, man? What's new with you?
I'm good, man. New. Just enjoying watching the show that we worked on a year ago, Stargirl, and I just watched episode 7 with my family last night. It's a lot of fun. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, and it's the first show I've ever been on that they want to watch and can watch. So
right,
it's really exciting to be able to have that time together, and they genuinely enjoy it, which is fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You've been busy, man, the last few years with various TV shows and films.
Yeah, I try to stay as busy as I can.
Right. So I want the listener to get to know a little more about you. Where are you originally from?
Well, it's kind of a long story. I was born in New Jersey, but then we moved around a lot. Lived in Pennsylvania, New Hope, Pennsylvania, until I was 10. And then we moved to Colorado, and I lived in Boulder, Colorado from when I was 10 to when I was finished high school. So that's the place I resonate with the most, because those were pretty formative years.
Mm-hmm. When I was doing some research on you, I noticed that you went to Holy Cross in Worcester. I'm from Massachusetts.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I'm from Western Mass.
Okay.
So how was it going there?
What town are you from?
East Long Meadow, Springfield area.
Okay, yeah.
How was it going there for 4 years?
It was great. It was, Worcester is a kind of a dicey town, to put it
right.
mildly.
Yeah.
But the Holy Cross was a great school, and I met a lot of great people, and it's sort of an oasis in kind of a not great area. There's actually like 9 colleges in Worcester, which is crazy. But it's actually not that small of a town. But I went back to screen a movie I was in not recently, but like a few years ago. I went back to Holy Cross to show this movie I was in, and Worcester had not changed one bit.
Yeah, I don't think it's changed at all.
Yeah, the whole 90 or the whole 2000s. I graduated in 99. The whole hipster scene and organic food, Whole Foods thing, all of that just passed it by. And it's we went there, and I went with a guy I went to school with who directed the film, and we were just amazed at how it hadn't changed at all. It was like stuck in time. I liked Worcester though. I'm not knocking Worcester. Worcester had a lot of character and has a great history, but it has not changed very much.
When was that you went back? A couple of years ago?
2014 or
okay.
2013. Yeah. So, and I'd been back maybe once before since 1999 when I graduated.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you kind of had an idea you wanted to get into the entertainment industry?
Well, I'm also a filmmaker, and I made a film that I wrote and directed and starred in, and as a thesis project for this program I was in there. And they don't have a film I think they have a film program now, but they didn't then. And so I was, I guess, kind of a trailblazer there in terms of that, because a few people after me started making films there. So I was always interested, I think since high school, in not just acting, but in making films. And but the path for me was I always wanted to be an actor, but not just an actor. So I ended up going to graduate school after Holy Cross. I went to American Conservative, and that's where I met my wife. We've been married for 13 years, which is crazy. We have 2 kids, and she's an actor as well. And I guess college was when the idea sort of became a real thing. It was always scary of because when you get out of school, you don't have a clue how to do it,
Right.
whether you're going into film or whether you're going into acting or whatever. You just like, you're just kind of jumping off a cliff. Unless you grew up in the business, you don't really know how. So you just learn as you go. And I was fortunate in a lot of ways. I was able to come down to LA. I didn't know anybody down here. And after I finished grad school, and took a little bit of time, but I was able to make a living as an actor, and I've gotten to make a lot of films. So mostly short films, but I've kept myself busy, and it's been a with any career, it's a lot of ups and downs. You get one part and you're like, oh, this is it. I made it. It's all like, gravy from here. And then you don't work for a year and you're like, how did this happen? But I've been in the business long enough that I come to expect that. And so when you accept that about the business and you accept that it's not, you don't take it personally and you just realize this is a roller coaster ride, then it makes it a lot easier to deal with it, because you start to learn to see the business as it is, not as you would like it to be.
Yeah, it's just, and it's funny because I've had previous guests on, they come on like I'm an actor, but you know what? I want to learn other things too, just in case the acting doesn't stick around. Well, at least I can go to producing, I can go to filmmaking, whatever you want to do behind the scenes also.
Yeah, I was always like that from high school, really. Like my friends and I used to make films in high school, not films. I mean, they were just like silly videos that we would make on the weekends that we would shoot in, or, because we didn't know how to edit. So we would shoot in order on the camera. And that's not the easiest way to make a movie, but it starts to teach you like how, sequence works and all that kind of stuff, how to tell a story. And so I was always interested in other things. And, I'm not one of those actors that's like, if I can't act, I'll die, because I know people that are like that, who are like, I don't want to do anything but this, but I've just never been like that. I'm an artist. I'm a musician. I do a lot of other things that I sometimes find a lot more gratifying and fun than acting. But, I've sort of taken the approach of, why limit yourself if you don't have to? Other people do a good job of limiting you without you even trying. So you shouldn't limit yourself. You should do the things that you're passionate about, and even things that seem like there's no way you're ever going to break into. You never know. Funny way of working out.
What were like some of your favorite like movies and TV shows like growing up, or even like while you were going for this to get into the entertainment industry? Was there like certain films or TV shows that pushed you towards this even more?
So when I was in high school, Tarantino was becoming big, right? So I remember my brother was in London in school, and he told me that he had seen this movie called Reservoir Dogs. And he's like, when that comes out on video, you got to get it. So I rented it and I watched it in like 92. And so I was like a sophomore in high school, and it blew me away. And I don't know why that movie, because I always loved movies, always. I was a big Robert De Niro fan. I loved Robert Duvall. I loved Al Pacino. I loved all those like 70s, sort of the golden age or the second golden age of Hollywood, they call it. And I was a big fan of those movies. But for some reason, movement in the 90s made it feel like it was possible for someone that didn't go to film school and was just very passionate about making movies. And so that sort of opened up this idea in my mind of, wow, like maybe we can do this. And that's when my friends and I started making movies on video cameras. And there was something about him and his story that inspired me to, and a lot of people, obviously. It inspired a whole generation of pretty terrible films, but, some really good ones too. And so that was the first time I ever thought about like being a filmmaker. And again, even when I was in acting school, I never thought I'm just going to be an actor. I always thought like I'll use acting as a way to get into filmmaking. And a lot of people have done that. Jon Favreau has done that.
Right.
Scott Cooper has done that. A lot of big people who are big directors now started off as actors. George Clooney, of course. And yeah, so that was probably the first time I ever thought about the possibility of it as a career. Of course, you don't know anything. You don't know what the hell it's like. And it's not until you get into it that you start to learn. And it takes years to learn what the business is and what it's not, you know, and we come in with these preconceived notions and not a lot of information. And just about every step of the way, we're sort of shown that, nope, that's not it. But it's because if you knew all the ins and outs of how depressing and disappointing and crushing the business can be, you'd never even try it, you know? It would just be too overwhelming and you would just want to do something else. So every filmmaker, Ben Affleck, I've read all these interviews and they say that when they first started out, they had no idea what they were doing and they wish they still didn't, because it's sort of like this unfettered freedom that you carry into, you know, the start of a career. And that's the funnest part, you know, the beginning.
When you moved out to LA and, you know, you had a plan and everything, did you give yourself like years or like, okay, if this doesn't happen by a certain amount of time, I'm done. I'm going to go do something else?
I didn't do that so much, but I always knew that I just was delusionally convinced that I could make it, you know, and delusionally, and you have to be. You really do, because the business really kicks you in the nuts repeatedly over and over and over again. And you got to be able to withstand it, and you got to be able to take the blows, because they come, and they come at all stages of your career. So, and anyone that's been in the business for any period of time will tell you that, you know. So I didn't give myself a deadline necessarily of like, oh, I'm going to make it in 2 years. Maybe I should have, I don't know. But I always knew it. I always knew that well, you know why? Because I saw other actors, and I saw actors that I thought I was better than, and I saw actors that I thought I was as or could be as good as. And I thought, well, they have a career. Why can't I do it? You know, they're not like some golden god on a hilltop. Like, if this person got into the business and figured out a way to make a living, notoriety, and gets offered cool parts, why can't I do that? So you kind of have to come into it with that idea of like, why not me? Now, and I had encouragement off the bat, because a couple months after I moved to LA, I booked my first job. Funny enough, on this DC show called Birds of Prey, and now I'm on a DC show. So it's kind of come full circle. It was a DC Warner Brothers show, and now I'm on a DC Warner Brothers show. So I had, you know, a couple months after I came to LA and started auditioning, I booked something. So you get a little taste, you know, the hook gets set, and you start thinking, oh, this is it. I'm good to go. It's all smooth sailing from here. And of course it never is, or it rarely is. Some rare cases, I guess, people, you know, Ashton Kutcher, the story of him, he comes into town, he books a part that he didn't even really want. And you know, it was that 70s show, and he was just famous ever since. But that's a that's the exception, not the rule. So I never gave myself a time limit. I have in recent years, because I'm a father and I have a lot of responsibility now, and you just get so jaded with the business. You get so sick and tired of doing it. Not like, I always say to people, I love acting. I don't love being an actor. I just don't. Because it's so much BS and so many hoops you have to jump through, and so much disappointment and rejection and just BS, like, where you have a part and they're like, you know, and then it falls through, you know. That happens all the time, you know. So you can't count on anything, you know. You just can't. Until the check is signed, you don't know if it's happening. So you come to learn that that's the way it is. And like I said, you come to eventually, hopefully you come to accept it. It took me a little bit too long to do that. I wish I had accepted it earlier and seen it for what it was earlier, you know, rather than what I wanted it to be. But, you know, I'm in a place now, I'm in a much better mindset now, where I'm able to just let go of stuff a lot easier. I used to get really mad when I wouldn't get a part. I used to get really mad when I'd see, you know, someone I knew start to take off in their career and get ahead of me. And, you know, I had been in for the same parts and I'd beaten them on other parts and all this stuff. So there's so much compare and despair when you're an actor. You know, you drive down the street, you see someone that you know on a billboard, and you're like, why, what, that person sucks, you know? And I'm just being real. I mean, that's every actor. Every actor thinks that, whether they admit that's what they think or not, they all think that, you know. So that happens a lot. And, you know, as you become a father and you start being surrounded by different, you know, experiences in life, and you start realizing, you get a bigger, broader perspective on what role being successful as an actor plays in your life. And it really just starts to become, for me, a job. More than a fantasy to be realized, it becomes a job. I mean, sure, I'd love to work with great people. I'd love to work on projects with talented directors and writers, and I'd love to be on a cool show that everyone watches. But I don't need that. What I need to do is feed my family.
Right.
And you start to realize, like, it's a job. I need to earn health insurance and I need to feed my family. And those are the priorities. And everything else is, you know, just a cherry on top.
You're right. I got 2 kids. I know all about it.
Yeah.
It's like you come, I always tell people, you're second. Kids, family, that's first.
Yeah, it becomes very real, and it's cool. You know, you got your priorities become distilled, and you don't care as much about the other stuff. It's not that you never care about it, but it doesn't own so much space in your head.
Yeah. And you do have a show now that everybody's watching.
Yeah, I don't know about everybody, but a lot of people are watching it, and people love it. Stargirl, yeah, and that was a really lucky job. And I always say lucky because, of course, like, I can play the part, and I don't think I'm, like, you know, lucky in the sense that, like, I shouldn't have gotten it, but there's a million parts that I thought I should have gotten that went to someone else, and, you know, that's just luck. It's luck. So I feel very lucky to be on this show. I feel very lucky to have worked with the actors and the showrunner, Geoff Johns, and all the other people. And it was a great experience, and I hope it gets a second season. I guess we should find out in a few days, but people love it. And it's just so cool to be a part of the DC universe. I was a big Batman fan when I was when that movie came out in 1989, I was a huge Batman junkie, and I used to buy the comic books, but I hadn't really been into comic books since then. But there was a time in 1989, 1990, where I wanted to be a cartoonist because I'm an artist. And so my friend and I would buy all these comic books, and then we would just sit there and copy them for hours and try to learn how to draw these figures and all that stuff. And it was something we were really passionate about and wanted to do. So it's really cool to, like, get to actually be a character, the first person to play this character, you know. It's not like a Batman or a Joker where you have, like, all these other great performances to compare, and you have to, like, either go against the expectations or try to one up that person or whatever. It's like, no one's ever played Sportsmaster physically. I mean, there's been the cartoon on Young Justice, but to get to play that, to get to originate the role is really exciting.
How did you get involved with the project?
I just thought, I mean, my agent manager get me auditions, and I went in and I read for it, and I got it. Sometimes it's just that easy.
So it was a live audition. It wasn't a self-tape or anything?
It was a tape with the casting director. So okay. There's 3 kinds of auditions. There's auditions where you just tape it at home and you send it in, and 9 times out of 10 you hear nothing. Then there are the ones where you go in and read with casting and they put it on tape. That's the most common nowadays. You never meet the producers because they're somewhere else. And then there's other shows that you go in, or movies that you go in and you meet the director and the producers and they work with you and all that stuff. That's more rare nowadays. Normally you just don't meet anybody. And there's advantages and disadvantages to that. But this one I went in and I read for the casting director, and they just they taped it. They worked with me a little bit and had me do it a couple times, and it was just in and out. Took about 10 minutes, and then I was done. And then 2 weeks later, I got the part. And I didn't know what I was reading for. I knew
that was my next question, actually. Yeah. Because I know sometimes you guys go in there, you don't even know what you're going for.
Yeah, so you go in and they have what's called dummy sides, where it's not the real sides in the show, or it's the real sides, but they've changed all the character names. And mine was a little bit of both. Like, one of the scenes was the scene where I met Pat Dugan in episode 1. And then the other scene was a scene that never was in the show. So they, the character was the same character, but the name was different. His name was Scott Miller. I remember it very well. And then when I got the offer, it said Lawrence Crock / Sportsmaster. And I said, wait, this isn't the part I read for. And then I Googled it, and I was like, shit, this is like a big, this is a super villain. Because I had never heard of Sportsmaster, to be honest. So I got really excited. I was like, oh my God, I think I just stumbled into something really big.
It's a pretty cool supervillain character.
Very cool. Very cool. I immediately started Googling Sportsmaster, and I saw the Young Justice version. And then I read about, he goes back to 1941. I think he appeared first in a Green Lantern comic, and he's appeared in Batman comics. And still a character. It's Sportsmaster, and I read it and I was like, this is kind of goofy, but then I saw the Young Justice version. I was like, okay, I guess you could kind of do it in a way where it's cool, but it's still a little corny, it's very like 1940s, and but Geoff, in all his brilliance, figured out a way to like turn Sportsmaster into like a funny, cool badass. And at least I think, and a lot of people think, and it was a totally, I don't know if it was a totally different take on the character, but it was a different take on the character. And, he owns a gym. It's funny, like it's really funny. And he sort of reinvented all of these, golden age characters from the DC universe. And, he's great at doing that. And so it's cool to be able to play this character that's got a long history, but this is a different version of it, and there's not all this expectation about who Sportsmaster must be, because no one's ever played him before. So
in a way, you can kind of like run with them too.
Totally, you're originating the role, and you're playing Geoff Johns' version of Sportsmaster. You're not playing some other version. You don't have to stick to whatever this comic said or that comic said, or this storyline or that storyline. It's you're playing what the show is. That's it. Right. And that's what in other interviews, people have said, did you feel the need to be like faithful to whatever? And I'm like, no, you're faithful to the script. The script is the thing. No one's, the Stargirl is Geoff Johns. That's it. It's his creation, and it's whatever he made up. And so he's using all these other characters, and he's using elements of each one, but he's also reinventing them in his own way.
How would you describe Larry?
He is a very, he's an alpha male, he's a very, he's a happy guy, he's used to getting his way. He's, how I would describe him, looking at him from some other point of view, is he's a psychopath, but he has good qualities too. He's a good father, He's not very responsible in some ways. He kills coaches, but he is looking out for his daughter, and he loves his daughter, and he loves his family, and he loves his wife. And he's very passionate about that. And he's very passionate about fitness, and he's very passionate about self-improvement. And, he becomes this weird mentor to Pat, which is a great device that Geoff created. And, he genuinely likes Pat, and he genuinely cares about him, and he wants him to improve, because he likes to take people and make them better. He has the thing when he's working Pat out in the gym where he's like, my dad used to say that pain is you got to make pain your friend. So he really believes all that stuff, and he really is passionate about his gym and everything. And that's what I love about the show, is it develops these villains, and they're not just these two-dimensional characters. He gives them, kind of a little backstory, and they have other lives. In fact, they have other lives that they've been living for the past 10 years when they weren't being real, villains.
What's been like your favorite weapon to use? Because I know he uses a lot of sports weapons.
I love the bat, because the bat's that's like his
thing,
his jam. That's his favorite. The bat is a very intimidating, scary, versatile weapon. It can kind of work as like a sword and, a club at the same time. He's like parrying and sword fighting with Stargirl with it. And then he's also, and then it's also a missile launcher when he hits things with it. He hits his baseballs. So it's a really versatile, and like I said, intimidating weapon. There's not too many people would like to get hit with a baseball bat. it's a pretty gruesome, scary weapon. But then he also likes the hockey stick, and he likes I love the shuttlecock dag. That was hilarious. It's so you can have so much fun with it, and Geoff did such a good job of making it funny but not too campy. Like, it's funny, but it's also like dangerous. He beats the crap out of our man, and he doesn't care that he's a kid. He doesn't care if it's a teenager. He's just going all out, full tilt.
Well, you're a supervillain.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I don't have any moral qualms.
Yeah.
And that's one of the fun things about playing a villain as opposed to a hero is you're not encumbered by morality. You just do, you react from your lizard brain, and you do what you want, and there are no obstacles. When you're a psychopath, there's no moral obstacles to getting what you want. You just get what you want.
What was that? So when you went in there, like, what was your reaction when you first put your suit on?
Well, it wasn't that simple. It was a months-long process of getting the suit made. So I'm going to this place called LJ Super Suits, and the designer, LJ, she makes the suits for all the shows on DC Universe. She makes the shows for all the shows on CW. She makes that Amazon show, The Boys. They just do incredible work. They're like the super suit maker in Hollywood. And you go in, they take all these pictures of you almost naked. They take every single angle of you imaginable. I had to get a cast on my head so they could make a mold of my head and make a mask that would fit just my head. And then you have to, they show you the design. They have a mock-up design of it, and it looked exactly like the design. I think it was actually even better. But I think I went back 9 times.
Wow.
It's up in North Hollywood, and it's a long, drive from where I live. And there was a lot of schlepping back and forth to do these fittings, but it was fun. It's like I'm going to get a super suit. How cool is that?
How many people can say that?
Exactly. How many people get to play a superhero or a supervillain on a TV show? It's you could count them all on, maybe 4 hands. So it was a long process. So it wasn't like one day I just put it on, it was like gradual iterations of it that weren't finished yet. So I saw it at every single step of the way. But when we finally did the camera test before we started shooting the pilot, that's when it all came together, because we got to see every character in the show. And there are a lot of characters on the show in their super suits. And we did like these camera tests where they would like play music for your character, and you would like walk around as the character. You wouldn't say any lines, but you would like act like your character, and you would just sort of make stuff up and do moves. And I would like twirl the bat and all this stuff. And they played that song Thunder by AC/DC for Sportsmaster, which was so perfect, because Geoff already has his whole playlist for every character in the show. And that was when it like finally became real, because everyone else got to see the costume. Because me seeing it was one thing, but when you see everybody else's reaction to it, that's when it becomes real, because you're like, oh, this is a badass costume.
What's your kids' thoughts about you playing a supervillain?
They love it.
Yeah.
They love it. They love, the fandom. I show them I get all these DMs on Instagram from fans, and I show them to my daughter who's 9, and she just gets such a kick out of it. And she loves the show. Every time an episode ends, she wants to see the next episode. And they're teasing it out episode by episode. They didn't just dump them all, which is really smart, because it builds up anticipation and buzz and all that. And she loves it. She loves my character. She thinks I'm funny. She loved the fighting in episode 6. So they love it. They're absolutely tickled by it.
Awesome. So the show's on CW, and you're like, have you been watching like The Flash at all, or like Batgirl, or even
a couple years ago? I haven't seen Batgirl, but a couple years ago, my wife and daughter started watching The Flash, and I didn't watch all the episodes, but I watched a lot of the episodes, and we really all got into it. It became something we all watched together. And this was before I knew who Geoff Johns was or any of that. And then they started watching Arrow, and we started watching that, but it was a little too violent for my kids, so we stopped watching that. But those 2 shows, like I was into it. I've never seen Supergirl or Batwoman, but I really liked Arrow and Flash.
Would you like to see your character do a crossover, like when they do like those crossover episodes?
Hell yeah. Why not?
Right?
More Sportsmaster. Yeah, no, I love I love playing the character. I have so much fun playing the character, and like I've said to many people, if I could pick one character on the show that I could play, if I got to choose, I would pick Sportsmaster. And
what was like your favorite scene for this season?
Well, there are favorite scenes as Croc, and there are favorite scenes as Sportsmaster. The favorite scene as Sportsmaster, without a doubt, is episode 6, that huge epic fight in the parking lot, you know, and the scene in the hallway where we run up the wall and do all that crazy shit. That's awesome. And my favorite scene as Croc is the scene where we confront well, I love the scene where I train Pat, but I also love the scene where we confront the coach in the parking lot, because it's just such a great scene.
This was like 13 episodes. Do you think if season 2 comes out, it'll be 13 again?
I think so.
Yeah, that's good. I like seasons that are getting a little bit shorter now. 20 something is getting too long.
Yeah, 22 episodes, that's a lot of episodes. You're going to have, you do 22 episodes, it's going to be at least 5 of those are going to be filler.
True.
You know? Because they gotta when you have a 22 episode arc, you gotta tease the story out really slowly. I think 13 is a good, you know, like sweet spot for.
Plus, you can work on other projects.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as it was, Stargirl took up, you know, our whole year. I mean, we were filming from the end of February until middle of September, beginning of September. So that took up the lion's share. I did one other movie in that time that I was able to do when I wasn't in a couple episodes, but I was in most of those episodes. I'm in 9 out of 13. So, you know, it was, and we had to fly to Atlanta and all that. So it took up a lot of our time.
So that one gets filmed in Atlanta, huh?
Yeah.
It's funny how that one's in Atlanta, but like Flash is at Vancouver.
Yeah.
There's a few of them in Vancouver.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to shoot it in Atlanta because it takes place in Middle America. It takes place in Nebraska. So there's a lot of towns in Atlanta that, you know, in the surrounding Atlanta metropolitan area that look like it could be Nebraska. Mm. So it makes a lot of sense. Plus, they had these huge stages out on the outskirts of Atlanta that they used. There were 2 massive stages that were storage places. They weren't actual like sound stages. They weren't, you know, like you go to LA and there are places that were constructed to film in, but these are places that were not constructed as sound stages. They're just these giant hangars, you know? So there were 2 of them that we shot at. That's where the studios were. And they built these huge sets in there. And it was the biggest thing I've ever worked on. I was on Lost. That was a big show, but this was bigger.
That's right. Is there any other projects that you got coming out?
Right now, you know, with the pandemic and everything, it's been dead. Yeah. So I just I have to put myself on tape for something today that shoots up in Montana. And I put myself on tape for something yesterday. It's starting to come back, but it's been dead since March. I mean, everything shut down. So it all kind of ground to a halt. There's some production going on, but
yeah, I read that.
Yeah, but I don't know how they do it safely. I really don't. My wife was in the middle of shooting a series up in Portland when this hit, and they were shooting 10 episodes for this TBS show, and they got halted. So they have 4 more episodes left to shoot, and so she's been on hiatus, forced hiatus for 4.5 months, and or 4 months, I guess. And they're saying she's going to go back into production in August, but I don't know. We'll see.
It's funny because, like you said, like half those CW shows they stopped early this year, and they're not coming back till February.
Yeah, they had to make a lot of hard decisions.
So, like maybe even like Stargirl, if it gets picked up for season 2, you might not even get it until like a summer release.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because it takes a long. Obviously, if you've seen the show, there's a ton of CGI, and there's a lot of, you know, they already have the super suits built, but you know, so that because those take months. But they and they already have the sets built, so it's not going to, you know, the wind up is not going to be as long as it was for the first season. But you know, they have to figure out how they're going to write it in such a way to keep actors and crew safe.
Neil, how can the listeners find you on social media?
You can find me at Neil E. Hopkins on Instagram. I'm on Facebook too, just Neil Hopkins. And I'm on Twitter also, Neil Hopkins. Neil E. Hopkins on Twitter is my handle. My Instagram and Twitter handle are the same. I'm mostly these days on Instagram. I really just kind of scroll Twitter to read the news, but I don't do Facebook as much anymore. I'm mainly on Instagram. So yeah, hit me up.
All right, Neil, this was fun. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap, everybody. That's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to the Man Cave Chronicles podcast.
I finally get my man cave.
You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at the MCC Podcast and our website, themccpodcast.com. Until next time.